Now, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has said that the U.S. has intercepted an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela in international waters, a move that comes just days after U.S. President Donald Trump announced a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. It's the second time in recent weeks that U.S. has gone after a tanker near Venezuela amid a large U.S. military buildup in the region. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government has denounced the seizure of a new vessel transporting oil, describing it as a serious act of international piracy. Caracas says the actions by U.S. will be reported to the United Nations Security Council, other multilateral organizations and governments. All right, I'm now joined in by Dr. Asta Chadha, who's an associate professor of international relations at Ritsumeikan University, and she joins us from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Chadha, for joining us and for being available for a discussion here at NewsX World. Now, Dr. Chadha, as many are criticizing, is this just an attack on illicit, smuggling of narcotics to the U.S. or on oil tankers that are sanctioned, or is it really an attack on the current regime in Venezuela with an attempt to rather overthrow it?
Thank you for having me for this discussion, Kriti. Like you mentioned, this is a multifaceted issue. This does not directly only address U.S. concerns over narcoterrorism. That could be one angle, but there are several aspects to the story, right? So U.S. seems to be acting as a regional policeman. It's using its coast guards, it's using its military, it's trying to physically enforce economic sanctions through a maritime blockade. And there are three major U.S. strategic interests that emerge from this. One is, as President Trump has mentioned, he's fighting a war against narcoterrorism, but also he's trying to, fight a regime change or bring about a regime change in Venezuela. And U.S. claims of Venezuelan oil revenue funds, it's not so much just about the oil tankers, it's about what that oil is supposed to be funding. And the U.S. claim is that it funds narcoterrorism, right? And so U.S. thinks by cutting off this lifeline of Venezuela, U.S. could force Nicolas Maduro out of power. But then there's a second angle to this as well. The seized vessels are reportedly or were apparently, some of them were bound for China. And U.S. Looks at China as a strategic rival in the wider Indo-Pacific. And China's influence in the Western Hemisphere has been increasing over the past few decades. So this seems to be, for the United States, is one way to signal to China that U.S. has still not given up its regional hegemony, at least in its own strategic backyard. Yeah. And then lastly, this is something that President Trump mentioned during his campaign as well, specifically when he said that the US should try and keep oil as compensation for alleged Venezuelan theft of U.S. assets. So this is again one of those moves by U.S. to not just try and remove Maduro administration from power, to try and seize Venezuelan ties with Iran, China, or any strategic rivals of United States. And also, in a way, it is trying to signal to its own public that, we are seeking return of assets and resources that were American or that have American interests in those.
All right. Well, thanks for your perspective there. We do continue to stay on with us as we move on to some news now coming out of your